Don't worry, he says. Easier said than done. Every time I leave my mom's house in Rochester and drive back here to Syracuse, she makes a point of saying, "Now be careful, drive safely." And I say to her, as I said to her and to my dad, "Don't worry." And she will stomp her feet and say, "It's my job to worry. I'm your mother," right? Maybe some of you who are parents have that same item in your job description, and you feel attached, like if you're not worrying for your children, there's something wrong. But Jesus says, do not worry. You cannot add a single hour or day to your life by worrying. Just as I was preparing for this homily this week, two close friends of mine called up. My friend Jim and his wife Christine are trying to adopt a little girl in China. They're school teachers. They already have two children of their own. One is 5 years old, and the other from a previous marriage is 19. They could have more children, but they've decided that out of their own desire to be of service in the world, they wanted to try to find a home for one of these unwanted girls in China. I don't know if any of you has gone through the adoption process yourself or know people who have, but it's incredibly complicated and costly. And at every step of the way, you're being vetted by other people who don't necessarily know you. They rely on recommendations from friends and others. The uncertainty is very palpable. Jim, my dear friend from college, was expressing how his wife Christine is filled with worry about the financial end of things. And he is filled with worry about whether, if they do actually succeed after all this time and are able to adopt a little girl, will she find truly a home in their household? Now, I'm quite sure that these two friends of mine, two of the best people I know in the world, are going to be great parents. And I know that they were going to do their utmost to make sure that this is going to work out. And so I said to Jim, Jim, can you trust that you've done everything in your control and taken all the responsibility that's available to you, but now that the rest of it has to be on the other side of the line? And he said, "What line?" I said, "The line where we stop trying to control and surrender in faith." He said to me, "That's exactly what I was looking to hear," right? I think any of us, and especially us churchgoers, tend to be pretty conscientious, responsible folks, right? For the most part, right? We're not perfect. But we tend to be folks who worry for the good, as if it's part of our job description. And yet, God clearly, in this gospel and throughout the example of Jesus' own life, calls us to the line, to do everything that's within our control and then to make an act of surrender. Why do we worry? It's almost as though we think by worrying there's some activity we can do towards our goal, right? At least it feels like we're doing something, even if worrying is wearing us down and wearing others out. But yet, when we make an active act of faith, there is activity involved. And when we make an act of faith, we notice that God's providence to us is actually quite extraordinary and abundant. We'll begin to see with new eyes how much God, in fact, does provide for us. There's another thing about anxiety. We might think that in the face of the unknown, we should use our minds, our reason, to figure things out as a way of kind of managing the uncertainty. The problem is, and maybe Neil could say more about this as a psychologist, but the mind, in the absence of facts, makes up stories, right? Isn't that true? We actually often dig into our worst nightmares and fantasies in the face of uncertainty, and then our thoughts begin to race. Or am I alone out there? Do you know what I'm talking about? Okay. So in fact, instead of going up to our minds and our heads when we're in the face of uncertainty and unknown, it's actually time to move ironically down to our hearts. Behind the tabernacle is a beautiful representation of Jesus and the Sacred Heart. And as he points to his heart, it's ablaze with fire, with passion, with compassion. The heart is where our courage dwells. It is where our hope and our faith are alive. The heart is where the kingdom might be found. It was for Jesus, and it is for us. When we get out of our heads and when we listen to our hearts, we actually find that our worries begin to subside. And what we tap into is a deep strength and God-given grace to face uncertainty and to know that no matter what, all will be well, and all will be well, and all manner of things will be well. So, this day, in the face of all the uncertainties of our lives, I just want to leave you with those three things. First of all, recognize that line between what we have in our control and everything on the other side of it. You'll notice there's a little bit of relief that comes when we're actually pretty clear about where that line lies. Number 2, when we find ourselves facing the unknown, I encourage you, get out of your head and go down into your heart. Listen to God speaking there, and listen to the reassurance and faith that dwells right here. And then third, discover in your heart the same kingdom that Jesus himself experienced, this radical sense of being beloved by God, and in that love, everything else is given to us.